Do you remember that scene from Winnie the Pooh where Tigger bounced himself into a tree? I recently watched the movie again, and I thought it was delightful, but it has a very nice application to life and to life coaching, but also to building something new when you are trying to create your own business. So the indomitable, the irrepressible Tigger bounces himself into a tree. He's with Roo, the little kangaroo. And Mrs. Kangaroo is the mom. Yes, I'm like, don't confuse the names. So he's with the tiny little kangaroo, and then the kangaroo asks him, "Can you climb trees, Tigger?" And he said, "We don't climb. I don't climb trees. I bounce them." And then he bounces him up into the tree. And when he looks down, he realizes that's a far way back to the ground, and he freaks out and he clings to the tree and he can't get out, and everybody comes to help, but he would listen to no one. And then the narrator of the story, he turns up and he asks, "What's going on?" And Tigger is like, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm the narrator." And Tigger says, "Narrate me out of this tree." And that sentence is the one I want to focus on. But let me quickly end the story and tell the rest of the story about Tigger. So then they do this very funny thing in the movie where they turn the camera and you get a little bit like motion sickness. And they turn the page, they actually turn the page of the book because it's kind of supposed to be read from a book. And Tigger, he steps onto the words of the story and he climbs out. Now, don't we often get ourselves into trees? Then we look down and we realize, oh, this is very, very high. And I think my job as a coach, what I often do, I narrate my clients out of trees. I narrate my clients out of the the corners they painted themselves into. It reminds me a little bit of my one client, Yao. She's such a good example of this. She was already a successful entrepreneur when I started coaching her. I coached her in a mastermind for entrepreneurs. So that's how I met her. And she wanted to close down her current business and start a new one. But she was in that Tigger tree. I can't do this. And she was giving me all the reasons why it's not possible. She was in a business relationship and she wanted to close the business, and that would upset this business partner. And there were taxes, they were behind on taxes, and she would have to pay that first. All the excuses like, the tree is very high, the tree is very high. And then I asked her only one question. I could see how she was painting herself, into a corner. And I asked her only one question. I said, "Tell me how it's possible to close down this current business and start a new one." And that is how I turned the page for her, and she could step onto her own words, her own story words, and get out of there. And when I met her in person about, a year later, at a conference, she ran to me and she said, Riso, you made me almost $1 million with only that one question. And it is true. And why was it? She's a lot more successful than me financially, but I was able to do that. And why? Because this is true of all humans. We are like jars or bottles who can't read our own labels. I know it's a striking metaphor, and I always like it. I've liked that metaphor, but recently I've been thinking, why is that? Why is it that we can so easily see how other people can get out of the trees, but we can't get ourselves out of the tree? And here's the reason. Here's the reason why you can't read your own jar. It's because you are swimming in your own thoughts, but you don't realize it. You are telling yourself these stories over, and you repeat them till They sound and they feel to you like the absolute truth. There's no way to get out of this tree, it's too high. But an outsider is not swimming in those thoughts. They are not having that, that mental tape recorder, that mental, whatever you want to call it, this little device going on in your mind saying this over and over again. And that's why it's possible for someone on the outside to talk you out of the tree. But here's a big secret. You can get the skill to talk yourself out of trees, to get yourself out of corners you've painted yourself into. It's almost like learning. You can read the jar when you look in a mirror. You can use a mirror to see how it's your thinking that's getting you up in the tree. It's the story. And you can narrate yourself out of that tree. And it's by becoming aware of yourself and your thinking. It's understanding that there's a presence, a being, a consciousness, that is you, underneath all that thinking. So once you begin to recognize your thoughts as thoughts, they don't have that hold over you anymore. I'm probably putting myself out of business as a coach right now, but it's true. I experience it myself, and it can be so empowering. Our coaches still are wonderful. I love my coaches because they just take you to the next level. But at a basic level, you can look in the mirror and you can narrate yourself out of any tree. And it's one of the best life skills you can teach yourself, you can teach your children. And once you see the story, you can change the story. And that's how you keep going and keep going with whatever it is that you want to create. If you like this video, you're going to like the next one as well. Check it out over here.